What's up, Star Trek fans? I'm going to get right to the point. There's so much we can talk about. Discovery, is it now no longer canon, things like that. But I'm going to talk about how to save Star Trek, or at least how to start saving it. I think that Terry Matalas did a great job and obviously had some really good success. I think to a small point, Strange New Worlds has had a little bit of success as well, but for the most part, everything has been a bomb, a failure, a disgusting failure, Star Trek-wise. What must I do to prove it to you? Die. Sorry, I don't know why. That just popped into my head, Q and Morph. I don't know why. But no, so how to save Star Trek is this. I think you start with a small win. I believe this is a small win. In my opinion, what is one of the best things you could do? I think one of the best things you could do is cater to the fan base that's already there. And I'm talking about the people who are 35 years old and older, especially the people that are over 40, right? The demographic of 40, 50, 60, and 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds who are out there. And this could be like this is the new Matlock for the 80-year-olds. You know what I mean? This is the new, and just certainly there's so many people, but anybody below 35, it's not really going to work. So I would think that Star Trek should bring back a TV show as if, just pretend nothing else happened and pretend like it's 1999 or it's the year 2000. And instead of doing Star Trek Enterprise, you do another show that takes place after Deep Space Nine, after Voyager, all that stuff. Do a series that takes place in that timeline. Or hell, do a series that takes place in the Terry Matalas later timeline with Picard. Do that. I'm not saying do Legacy. Don't do that yet. Yes, you should have already done Legacy, and Legacy should be happening. But let's say they don't want to do Legacy yet or whatever. This is an easy win. Bring back the cardboard sets. Bring back the campiness. Bring back the almost exact uniforms. Bring back that era that everybody loves so much and there's so much nostalgia for. Hell, there's new people watching those shows now that love them. Bring back that style. I'm not even kidding. Bring back that style and launch a TV show and go hire some former writers who used to do that stuff. People that worked on the Orville and some other things. Go, bring in Terry Matalas if you can. Bring in Seth MacFarlane if you could. Whatever. And then hire some new writers who understand Star Trek. Get some pointers from Rick Berman on trying to keep Gene Roddenberry's legacy alive in the right way. Terry Matalas for the most part got it. I think Seth MacFarlane for the most part gets it based on what I see on Orville. I know that that's got a little bit of an asterisk of a comedy show and things, but it does Star Trek better than Star Trek has done up until Terry Matalas came along. So why not? Why? Because it would be cheaper to shoot with those old school style sets, right? You could have a minimal budget. You could go get a brand new crew of people who, are no names. Go get mostly no-name actors or mildly small successful. People that are just almost free, go get people who are cheap. And then, but hopefully that are good. And then, start building a set like the old school Star Treks. Like TNG, like Voyager, like Deep Space Nine, and literally do a throwback show. Do a freaking throwback show. People my age, I'm 40 years old. People my age are going to get a kick out of that. As long as the show's decent, right? Even if it's just, pretty good, right? If it's along the lines of those shows. Now, I liked Enterprise. We've talked about this on this channel so much. I like Enterprise. I like them all. I like Deep Space Nine. I think Deep Space Nine was the most a little too dark at times, but there's also just wonderful episodes of Deep Space Nine. But it's good enough that I like it. I still like all of them. I think Enterprise is really good. I think they missed with some of the stuff they could have done, but in the end, I really love Enterprise. I love the characters because mostly the stories. It's really the vibe, the heart, the vibe that Star Trek had that it doesn't really have anymore. And if they could just bring that back and do that, and I don't understand, it's such an easy win. It could be the cheapest version of Star Trek you've shot yet. Maybe, I don't know, including the cartoon. I don't know. I don't know what the budget or cost of the animation is, but you really could have one of the cheapest things, but you'd have way more people watching it. And the commercial would be so good, return to a time, return to a Starfleet that you remember. Like, the USS Voyager has returned home. Deep Space Nine is this, blah, blah, blah. Jean-Luc Picard, his crew has changed. Like, that era, like just after Nemesis. Just after Nemesis. So in this era, it'd be so cool. I mean, you could literally, if you really want to, if the show was really, really successful, you could have a Picard debut or a Picard cameo where they de-age Picard. And they have it, and he's like really Picard. He's not the older Picard. He's like Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the U.S. They cut to him. Like, they could have these little things that they do. Cisco. Maybe they'll never do the Cisco thing because we don't know what that actor's up to, but there's just so many. I don't even care about that. I don't even want cameos and nostalgia. Forget all that anyway. I think it would be fun to have a show that was literally a throwback. They barely upgrade much at all. They mostly make it look like it did. And I think people would get a kick out of that. And I think it could be successful. If the writing is good, it could be really successful. If the writing was not good, then at the very worst, it would be just kind of like a sort of a nostalgia trip. Like, that's cute. It's not really been good, but it's so cool. It's weird. It's cool to see the retro thing, but it's not working, but it's whatever. But, like, people will watch it for that interest. But let's hope it's good, right? Like, it's really good. The cream rises to the top. Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1 was not great. Season 2 was really bad and also really good. And then Season 3 was perfect. Everything just went from there and got really good. See, that's the difference. A lot of people bring up, Star Trek has always been like this. No, it hasn't. Because Discovery sucked in the beginning, it sucked in the end, and it did bad. Star Trek The Next Generation started with so much excitement, people got negative on it, and then it still did all right, and then it got really good. There's a difference. But, up, down, up, is a clear difference. You know what I'm saying? Star Trek nowadays, though, is just, like, bad. It's just not good. So I say go get some writers that love Star Trek and know Star Trek, and don't get a bunch of 25-year-old meatball woke idiots who want to come on and just be like, I'm going to push the agenda of whatever, and Star Trek's always been about that. It's not really about that, no. So you need to go get people that are good-hearted, good-natured. They're not trying to cram their opinions down your throat. That's literally like the opposite of what Star Trek is. It would just be a lot of fun to make a throwback style series of Star Trek. And hello, I'm willing to write them. Let's go. Give me the call, Paramount. Or who really owns it now? I don't even remember. Somebody else is taking over. Is it Skydance or J.J. Abrams? It's one of those things. I should probably look it up before I make this video, but whatever. You know what I mean, and you know what I mean, and we know what each other means. But I just think it would be phenomenal to see that style come back. And that's why I get sick of when everybody's like, oh, yeah, we certainly wouldn't want to do that anymore, and the campiness, and we wouldn't want to, it's like, well, I do want to see that. Now, I'm fine if you upgrade it and you do make it look like Picard Season 3 and, you make it look where Legacy, or you just if you make Legacy fine. I'm all for that if you want. But I do think it would be cool if we saw a Star Trek from the perspective of the timeline of when the Next Generation is still going on and, maybe like 1995. Like let's say the Enterprise D has not been destroyed yet. So it's 93 actually. But like, the Enterprise D has not been destroyed yet. Q is still there with Picard, messing with Picard. Deep Space Nine exists. And Voyager's maybe hasn't even started yet. I would be down for, and maybe it's a ship that's far away, or maybe it's a ship that's on some other missions or something. It would be really cool to see that. And therefore, you could just make it look exactly like the Voyager Next Generation era, and just replicate that and do that. That would be even better. And then at the same time, you could announce Legacy. And I think those two shows, what I just came up with and Star Trek Legacy happening, would be successful. And I think you can keep Strange New Worlds until the wheels fall off. I think Strange New Worlds has a little bit of a core audience. I don't know how big it is. Only Paramount knows. So I don't like Strange New Worlds. I kind of like the first season a little bit, but I was like, ooh, they got some problems. Maybe it'll get better. But season 2 was really bad for me. So I was like, oh, like this show was a 6 out of 10 for me. And I thought, hey, maybe next season it'll be a 7 or maybe an 8. And instead it's now like a 4. So I don't know. Discovery's trash. It's just so bad. So all we really have is Picard Season 3. Picard Season 1 and 2 are awful piss. And then, Strange New Worlds, I guess, has found, like, the Discovery audience. And even some of the other classic Trek people kind of like it, some of them. So Strange New Worlds, like, in popularity, I don't work at Paramount, so I don't know all the numbers and all the things. I don't know anything. But I'm assuming that Picard Season 3 was, like, the most watched or successfully rated show. I mean, according to Rotten Tomatoes, Picard Season 3 is the best show they have, which I agree with, so that makes sense. So Picard Season 3 is the best thing they ever did, but they don't have Legacy. And they don't have a classic show like I'm talking about doing, a throwback, classic, funny, nostalgia show. Not funny, but fun. Stop with the funny, too, by the way. Don't do comedy. So you would have Star Trek Legacy. You would have a throwback show like I'm talking about. You would have Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is good for the newer audience, I guess, even though I think it's kind of an abomination, especially the way they treat Spock. Although part of Spock is great. Ethan Peck has a really good voice. He really kind of looks like Spock to me. It's really pretty good. But it's the way they treat him and the way that he acts. Like, it's just not Spock. It's almost him, but it's not. So you would have 3 shows right there. I think Starfleet Academy has kind of like an all-star cast coming on, which is very bizarre. So maybe Starfleet Academy could be good, but isn't it set in the Discovery timeline or the Discovery era? And Discovery, they're saying isn't canon maybe, but they're not really saying that, so we really don't know that if that's true. So it seems like Discovery might not be canon, but they're bringing on a new show that takes place during Discovery time, but that's not canon. So is this show new canon? Why would they bring on a show that's not canon? But then again, Section 31. Section 31 is going to suck. People are going to go, ooh, all the Discovery fans are going to go, oh my God, she's so badass. This is so crazy. But it's, that's only going to be like 200,000 people are going to watch that and think that was pretty cool, I guess. And everybody else is going to think that's not Star Trek, or that sucks, or it's just bad. I don't mind Section 31 being crazy, because Section 31 has always kind of been around Star Trek, and it's so not Star Trek. That's the whole point of Section 31. So they can kind of get away with doing Section 31 because, yeah, it's always existed and it's always been anti-Star Trek, even though it's a division of Starfleet and anti-Starfleet. But most people don't want to see the show about the thing that's the opposite of what the show is about. So I don't even know, bro. What a waste of money. You're going to pay Michelle Yeoh like $12 million or something? When you for $12 million, you could have made the classic Star Trek show that I was telling you about. Ridiculous. Anyway, I feel like if I worked for Star Trek at Paramount or Skydance or Sky Sword or Robot World or whatever it's called, I feel like I could make them a good amount of money or a decent amount of money. And I think it would come down to a tight budget and doing what people will like. And then you need to create a new audience at the same time. And part of that, I don't know exactly what you would do. I mean, in a realistic world, you'd actually shut down Star Trek for like 3 years. You would put all Star Trek shit on ice for 3 years and plan out what you're going to do when you return. And you would go on a launch a campaign announcing Star Trek's back. And it's good instead of whatever that was the last 10 years. But you know, I don't want to take 3 years off, and I know they probably don't. So let's not do that. Let's just fuck it. Let's rush it. But again, like I said, I would work on the budgeting, and I would also think about potentially, if I was them, creating pilots for ourselves. Like, I would look at the trends of Picard and Strange New Worlds, and I would think, well, what do we like about the trends, the stats, the money? Like, what do we like about that? What do we like about the trends we're seeing with our old shows that are being watched, like TNG, Voyager, all that stuff? What do we like about those? And I would think about releasing a couple of 1 and 2 part, specials on the network or on the app, whatever it is, specials. And they'd be like an hour and a half long or something like that, 2 hours, even an hour and a half, something like that. Little episodes where, like Janeway, of course. Janeway could come back for something and do a 1 hour, 2 hour special. Picard could do a special. I mean, you could literally do it on so many people. You could do it on Riker. You could do it on, everybody. And you could not screw up Terry Metalis' thing. You could certainly do it on some of the DS9 people that we haven't seen. Unfortunately, DS9, it's all kind of falling apart. Avery Brooks will never probably potentially ever come back to Cisco. We really can't do that. I would like to see Scott Bakula as an admiral in Enterprise. You could even, with Scott Bakula, you could even do, I've always thought of, in fact, I put a couple little ideas up on this site on my channel here already about, how, Admiral Archer is in his room, and then Daniels shows up, and there's like an emergency, and basically they have to fix the timeline. Somebody's messing with the timeline again, or whatever else. Or Daniels always knew he had to show up at this time to complete something. He's like, this is the last time that we'll ever see each other again, Captain Archer, And Archer's like, I never thought I really would see you again, unless it was something bad. And he goes, well, it is bad, but I also knew this would have to happen. So I'm just going through the motions, you could say. However, some faction has altered, the results or whatever. So anyway, you got to come with me and do this thing. And basically, in this alternate reality, they go back and they stop Archer from saving Shran's kid or whatever it is in that last episode. So the Federation doesn't really form the right way. It does form in a weird way, but not the right way. And so in this timeline, Trip is alive. And so Archer has to sort of like essentially go back, fix all these things, but also has to work with Trip to do it. And this will solve the problem of, T'Pol if she's not going to be on the show. But hopefully they could get everybody back. And the bottom line is they have to go out on a mission similar to, Picard Season 3. But instead of Picard Season 3, it's not 10 episodes, right? Because we're talking about Enterprise. It's not a great series that everybody loved. It's got a small audience. You know what I mean? It's got a small audience as well. So this is budget friendly. We've got to be careful with the budget. And if anything, it's probably a 1, 2, or 3-parter. And we're basically starting in a way where Star Trek Picard Season 3, episodes 8, 9, and 10, right? 8, they all sit down for the first time at the thing. 9, they're off to the races, and then 10 is the conclusion. I would do that with this, like a 3 or 4, 3, 2 episodes, something like that. And in the end, Archer basically has to work with the crew of the alternate universe where, they're all pretty much the same, right? Because they're still the same people for the most part. Things have just changed a little bit. So Trip is alive, and Hoshi and everybody, they're all there. But at the very end of it, it's hard for Archer because he has to say goodbye to Trip again and essentially say, hey, once we destroy this thing or we do whatever, it will essentially erase everything that's happened. None of you, you'll all exist pretty much as I remember you. You won't know it, and Trip, but you don't live. It's something he's holding back, right? It maybe until the end, and Trip doesn't even know, and Trip's like, wow. And it's sort of a shocking thing for Trip. And now maybe you could drag Trip into the other universe. So Trip from that universe now exists in the Prime universe, but the Prime Trip is still dead. And it's sort of a Data situation, like in Picard. So I think potentially it probably would be better to keep him dead and have that goodbye again, but you get to see Trip, and you get to have that adventure. And when Archer comes back, he's sitting and he's talking with maybe T'Pol. If they can't get Jolene Blaylock to be on the show, then obviously they'll have to do something else. Maybe they could get, maybe they could get her to be in a video scene where she could just shoot the video somewhere and she's talking to Archer over communications and he's talking to someone, maybe even narrating the whole show or something. And he goes, and that was, you would never prepare yourself to say goodbye to somebody that you lost and lose them all over again. And then she's like, what was he like or something like that. And Archer's like, he's exactly like you would remember him, T'Pol. That's why it was so hard. And T'Pol is blah, blah, blah. And what a scene. What a thing you could do with Enterprise for very little. Well, maybe it would be a little bit of money. Scott Bakula is probably worth a lot, but maybe Scott Bakula would take a pay cut. Probably not, but maybe. And somebody could romance him a little bit. Paramount, send me out there. I'll cut my sales promo on Archer. Do you know, Scott Bakula, what this character means to so many people and what it means to everybody and what it would mean for all these people to have a little job? But we can't do it. We don't think we can do it because obviously everybody else would do it for maybe not a lot of money, to be honest. But we knew that we know what your ticket number is and we know what you're worth. And but the show really doesn't work without you. So we didn't want to insult you, but we did want to say we're thinking about this, but we're probably going to scrap it because we just can't see the budget. But we might be able to do it if we sacrifice some of the story and just shoot it on like 3 locations or something. But before we decide all that and we continue writing and we go any further, what are you willing to, what maybe potentially would you be willing to do this for? Because we're not going to lie, it's sort of a hometown discount. It would be. But you're worth so much more. But we have to ask. And maybe they could get Scott Bakula to be like, listen, if we can shoot it in a week or 2 and whatever fucking bullshit, whatever, maybe you could do it. Maybe we could get Enterprise reunion thing, 3 episodes. And hell, maybe if it does really well, maybe they would then do more. And that would be, then you'd have to decide whether you want the alternate universe Trip to come into this world. And I think it would be interesting if Trip knew that he wasn't really Trip. He's like, I'm Trip and I really am Trip, but at the same time, this other Trip is, he still did sacrifice himself and he's still a different person. It's kind of like Data coming to that realization in Picard. But anyway, so maybe you could do that. I just think it'd be great. And I think that there's so many things you could do. And and that depends on how many people are watching the old shows. If there's a lot of people watching the old shows and you're like, man, people still love these old shows. If we did some like retellings of, not retellings, but if we did some sort of, specials using these era of people, is that worth money? And maybe it is. Anyway, I'm really rambling, guys. I'm really babbling on and rambling, trying to make this video as long as possible. I bet like 20 people watch this video. This has been Star Trek Late Night. If you want, leave a comment down below. I need you guys to click the like button. And please do subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. I wish I was working in Hollywood so I could bring all this stuff to light and potentially make some money for the studio and bring Star Trek back. And then, of course, that on a side note would be, of course, relaunching the, movie franchise, but maybe potentially a new TV series, that could do well. We need a new TV series that's good and, gets over with the younger people. And then we also need maybe a movie that does that as well. And then on top of that, we're pleasing the old fans, but we certainly need no more Discovery type stuff. And Strange New Worlds might kind of teeter-totter because lucky enough it's pretty good for the Discovery crowd and it's liked by a quarter or a half of the classic crowd. So that's kind of a win, I think, in some ways. Small win, Strange New Worlds. But we want 2 or 3 times the audience of Strange New Worlds to start showing up. We want people to be like, you got to see the new Star Trek. It's pretty cool. Or, just whatever. We got to figure out a way to make it work. Because even the worst Star Wars show is doing better than Star Trek. And so, for those reasons, I wish I was working in Hollywood. Because we need to hire so many people. We don't need to hire so many people. We just need to hire so many right people. People that are right. Or that know what they're doing. That are the right people for the job. Okay, I'm really going to end the stream now. If you want to support my channel, leave a super thanks down below. Subscribe. Lay it out all on the line. Tell me what you think, what you like, you don't like. What are your opinions? How could we save Star Trek going forward? This is Star Trek Late Night, and I'll see you next time.